First instrument. My first instrument was piano. I would say that a little more than advice, it was an imperative from my parents that I take at least 2 years of piano at the age of 9, 10 years old before I could choose the instrument that I wanted, which was originally the tenor saxophone. My parents were not musicians, but obviously somebody knew something, because it was probably the best decision ever made, because piano is really important to know. And by the time I was 11 or 12, I could read music and play a Fair Release and spinning song. But then, of course, I wanted to get the tenor, and then there was another have to. In those days, when you began saxophone, they made you play clarinet, or they urged you to play clarinet for at least a year. So finally, at around 13 years old, I got to the tenor saxophone, and the rest is, as we say, history. It's a little convoluted, but I did get there. This is a very good question. What was my very first paid gig? I was working from the time I was 13 years old. And I worked the Catskill Mountain resort area, the Jewish Borscht Belt, the summer of my 13, because my birthday's in September, with a group that subsequently we were together for about 5 years, playing those hotels and playing in New York. We were all from New York, Brooklyn, playing bar mitzvahs and weddings and sweet 16s and so forth. So it would have been around the age of 13 years old, and I, of course, was very impressed, and my parents were like, oh, this is great, you'll be able to pay for medical school. See, I was already destined to be. And anyway, that devolved, or say evolved into, jazz after I saw Coltrane. At 15 years old, I saw Coltrane live. And that's, of course, another story, but that was what made me say there's something beyond the pale here that has to be addressed.
What's your creative process?
Well, ideally, all of the above would be true. We're describing the artistic process. But for me, this is not to take away from the magic of it. It's a job. It's my duty. I mean, for some reason I'm sitting here. And there's a responsibility that goes with that to the outside world, I think, for what we all do. And then to myself, to be true to myself. So to me, it's like I have a project to do. I do my research. Okay, I'll give you a very good example. In a few weeks, we're playing at Birdland in Manhattan. 1 week with illustrious band, John Abercrombie, Steve Swallow, and Joey Barron. And we are playing the music of Thelonious Monk for the whole week, which I've never done. I don't think any of us ever done. And I have the Monk biography on my table, ready to go on the plane with me to Europe on Monday, because that's part of what I think is my responsibility, to read his life story, which I hear is a very good book, by the way. So that's part of the research, to listen to Monk's renditions of some of the songs we'll do, to think about him and me and John Abercrombie and the other guys. So to me, a project means research, and research means that the artistic process is included in that. Creativity you can't explain when a bell rings, but I really just sit down and go to work. And I look at it like, my job is to be creative in this music. That's my job. So the magical part, I think, takes care of itself. I hope. I hope so. Good? Okay.